Hey guys, thanks for joining us for this 135th episode in Season 2 of Good Questions with Cameron Dole. Special guests on this episode include Forrest Galante. He's got a new series, Mysterious Creatures with Forrest Galante, which will premiere this Sunday on Discovery. We'll also visit with Dr. Sanjay Gupta. His new book, World War C, Lessons from the COVID-19 Pandemic and How to Prepare for the Next One, is now available. We'll also visit with country singer and songwriter Kevin McCoy. We'll talk about his new single, Blue Collar. We'll also share our monthly visit with our good friend Meathead Goldwyn. We'll be talking about salt and some fall veggie grilling ideas as well. We'll also visit with music mogul Jason Peterson. We'll talk about streaming music, also streaming versus traditional cable systems as well. And we'll visit with our good friend country singer-songwriter Paige King Johnson. We'll talk about her new single and video for Baby Don't, plus she'll also play an acoustic for us as well. If you would, please take the time to subscribe, comment, leave some feedback, check out the shop and share with your friends. Now, the only thing worse than a dangerous TikTok trend is one that comes back for another round of punishment. Have you heard about this scalp popping trend yet? Well, it went viral around the holidays last year and apparently it's seeing a resurgence. The idiots risking this need to have fairly long hair to do it. Basically, someone takes a chunk of your hair, twists it around their finger, and yanks. But the point isn't to rip your hair out, it's to separate your scalp from your skull. Now, there is a popping sound, and ignorant teenagers think it's great for some reason. But that sound is the soft tissue under the skin literally separating from your skull. Now, doctors are telling people not to do it because, well, duh. But also because it can cause bleeding under your scalp or create a sore on your head. Good to have Forrest Galante back on with us. Got a new series to talk about that's going to premiere this weekend. It's called Mysterious Creatures with Forrest Galante. I guess he was a shoe-in for it. First off, Forrest, always good to visit with you, sir.
David, thanks for having me, man. It's great to be back.
Now, Forrest, tell us about the new show, and I've already checked out the trailer and all, and it gets a little dark and a little scary, doesn't it?
Well, the world's a scary place. The new show, Mysterious Creatures with Forrest Galante, is super fun. Last time we spoke, I was doing a show called Extinct or Alive, also for Animal Planet, and the premise of that show was looking for animals that have been declared extinct. Could they still be out there? Well, this show sort of expands that universe a little bit, and the idea behind it is that we're going to try and attempt to tackle extinction before it occurs. It's digging into the myths and misconceptions of wildlife around the planet and really looking at the human-wildlife conflict that is caused because of those misunderstandings and attempting to resolve it in some cases. So it's an awesome experience, incredible adventure all around the planet with some amazing animals.
And Forrest, what's the thing that ties all of these stories together? What is there something that kind of makes each of those kind of stick together and they all kind of fit in, if you will?
Well, in this new series, it is absolutely misconceptions, right? Not having a clear understanding of animal behavior and honestly, quite frankly, fearing those creatures. And when humans and animals don't get along, it's the animals that always lose. So going in there, breaking down those stereotypes and attempting to resolve the problem.
And for you get to go all over the world. I know you talk Mozambique and even in Missouri. And my question, the Ozark Howler, I've got to know, what is an Ozark Howler?
That stumped me too. And I'll tell you, I got there. I did, because I'm not into Bigfoots and chupacabras, right? And when I heard this story, the whole premise of this new show is when you hear these legends, get to the biological truth behind them. And I got there going, all right, we'll figure out this Ozark Howler thing pretty quick. It wasn't until about a week into the investigation that I sort of dug into finding, and this is a tidbit for your listeners that most viewers won't get, that the Ozark Howler was most likely a combination of bootleggers that had been perpetuating the myth during Prohibition, as well as the extinct North American red wolf, which had been around during that era, and as their population were driven lower and lower, they would howl more and more. So between these moonshiners perpetuating the myth and actually recreating the howls and the actual North American red wolf howling to locate its mate, this mysterious creature was born. And the truth was, it was an incredibly beautiful rare animal that used to run throughout Missouri, known as the North American red wolf.
Wow. You're breaking news with us this morning.
I'm trying. And Discovery's probably going to give me a slap on the wrist after this, but I'll take it because it is it's very exciting.
Now, I've seen footage of you being in different places, underwater, on land. What are the ones that kind of take you a little bit more out of your comfort zone, if you will, Forrest?
Heights are my least favorite. I love diving. I'm a dive master. I'm a free dive instructor. There's not an animal on land that I have an issue with, not one bit. But when it comes to heights and I have to jump out of planes or do those rappels, it always gives me a little lump in my chest saying, don't do this. It's like the one thing. I'm not one of those nut jobs that wants to wingsuit everywhere or whatever. I just don't like the heights. So it's not about the animals. It's not about the environment. It's just about the height for me.
Have you noticed what's the biggest thing that you've noticed in maybe some of the requests that you guys have gotten over the last couple of years for us? I know things have slowed down a little bit, but has that maybe made people see things a little bit more than maybe they had before?
Pandemic or no pandemic, wildlife needs help no matter where you are in the world and no matter what's going on. So the requests never slowed down. While travel became more difficult, it didn't really stop the need for wildlife to be protected and be helped. And so I now sort of have this backlog of things like this crocodile in Indonesia that I need to go and sort out and rescue. But Indonesia is still closed. You can't get in there, even today with COVID. And so there's sort of this laundry list or backlog of things that I need to go and deal with as soon as I am able to.
That is good stuff. And again, the new series, Mysterious Creatures with Forrest Galante, is going to premiere this Sunday. And Forrest, I always want to make sure if folks have any questions, want to find more about the show, your writings, your social media, all that, where's the best place to catch up?
Yeah, I have all the regular social media channels these days. You can just look up my name, Forrest Galante. I've got a new book out called Still Alive, which really digs into how we got into doing this kind of work and my background. And, I'm always reachable.
There you go. Well, Forrest, it's always great to visit with you, sir. Looking forward to the new series and catching up again real soon, my friend.
Thank you so much.
Now, a lot of criminals will make one very stupid decision. Others will employ a Swiss Army knife of stupidity, and that's the case here. 3 carjackers attempted to steal a car in Virginia on Tuesday. Now, the first interesting decision was attempting the theft outside of a gym. Now, one of the thieves was able to get the keys from the owner, but the owner was trained in mixed martial arts and he fought back. Now, the guy who grabbed the keys got inside the car, but he couldn't do anything because it was manual transmission and he didn't know how to drive a stick. So all 3 carjackers retreated to their own car and drove off. Now, it wasn't long before the police were on their tail and they decided to lead the cops on a high-speed chase. Eventually, they pulled over and ran into the woods. Now, the cops caught up with them and they yelled at the guys to stop or they'd unleash the K-9 unit. 2 men gave themselves up, but the third tried to run, but he didn't make it 50 yards before the dog dragged him to the ground. Now, all 3 have been hit with an array of charges. All right, guys, promised you another very special guest, a family member of our stations here. Of course, we have A Better Life with Dr. Sanjay Gupta. We've got his new book to talk about today, World War C, Lessons from the COVID-19 Pandemic, How to Prepare for the Next One. And Dr. Gupta, always good to visit with you, sir.
What a pleasure. Thanks for having me. It's nice to be a member of the family.
Now, World War C, how hard was this one to put down on paper? I mean, was there times and things that you were just like, man, it's so heavy out there, but this info still has to be shared though, right?
Yeah, well, thank you for asking that. I hadn't really thought about just the difficulty of writing it. What I wanted to do was I think it's it's an optimistic book. I think it's really based on the idea that I kept hearing over and over again that so much of what has happened these past 2 years did not need to happen, did not need to cause this level of misery and pain and destruction. And I think that you got to be real specific in the strategies and the prescriptions to prevent this from happening again in the future. So that's what I really wanted to write about. What we went through does not need to happen again. I think part of that is a policy issue. Like, I think we think of pandemics or new viruses sort of like weather events, like a hurricane. It's going to come. We got to hunker down. There's nothing you can do about it. And the philosophy that you hear from a lot of people is that think about this more from a defense standpoint. How do we think about protecting the country from a defense standpoint? If you think about viruses that way, you start to react very differently. You're much more prepared and do a lot of planning ahead of time. And they even put a price tag on being pandemic proof. They said basically for about $30 per citizen, the country could be pandemic proof, not really pretty well protected from this sort of thing happening again. How do we get there? That's what World War C is all about. It's that prescription, both at a policy level, but also an individual level, our own health. How do we make sure we put our own health in a position where we have the highest immunity ourselves? People always say, I want to boost my immunity. What does that mean? How do you do it? I wanted to learn too for myself and my family, my loved ones, and I got it all. I learned a lot, and I put it in the book.
Now, Dr. Gupta, do you think that the lack of knowledge or maybe the overabundance of misleading information, do you think that played a big part in this carrying on as long as it did?
I really do. And I think I'm probably, living at a point where I've been a journalist for 20 years, and I've seen so much change over the last 20 years. And I think, we're in a different period now than we were a couple decades ago. I think there's always been misinformation out there. I think what has changed is that it's much harder to distinguish good information and bad information. And there's also not just misinformation, but there's disinformation. And disinformation is bad information that's put out there strategically to really create doubt and create chaos and things like that. It's really hard. I mean, you go online and you search for anything you want, and you can find evidence of anything you're searching for and have confirmation bias. See, there it is, right there. I'm reading an article about it, right? That will kill you, no question about it. Everyone who's taken one has died. It's that sort of stuff, and it's remarkable to me because I think there are people out there who are just trying to sow chaos, but I think for a lot of other citizens who are just worried about themselves and their families, they sometimes have a hard time understanding what to believe, and that's made it really challenging. I never believed, in December of last year when these vaccines were authorized, and it was such a celebratory event. It was such a triumph of science. And it's like, the vaccines are going to rescue us from this terrible pandemic. I would have never thought that a year later, 10 months later, that still half the country wouldn't be vaccinated. That's just because of human behavior, not because of science. And we have to acknowledge that. And that's part of, World War C as well. It's like you have to account for human behavior in these situations. Don't just count on the objective data or science. You got to count on how people are going to react to it.
And Dr. Gupta, what is your biggest takeaway from the way we've dealt with COVID and the pandemic? What is maybe the biggest eye-opener that you've seen?
I think the two biggest things, just on a human behavioral standpoint, I think from a policy and sort of global perspective, there's a lot to be said there. But I think two things. One is that just how people interpret risk. Even yesterday I was having this conversation with a few colleagues. If I tell you something is 0.5% lethal, 0.5%, there's a certain percentage of people who will say, wow, so you're telling me 1 in 200 people are going to die of this. We better be careful. We better really protect ourselves. And you'll get another group of people who will say, so we're 99.5% good, right? What's the big deal? Same objective data, very different subjective interpretations. And to be fair, if you're someone who can work at home and do Zoom calls and things like that, you're probably far less willing to accept a 1 in 200 chance of dying. If you have to be out there, frontline worker or whatever it may be, then 99.5% good sounds much better, right? I think that's a big one. And then I think the second one is just the United States was supposed to be the best prepared country in the world for a pandemic. That was what the indexes showed before this pandemic. And what you found was that, in part, wealthy countries got hit the hardest as a general rule this pandemic. Wealthy countries. That doesn't make any sense to people, right? You got more resources, you can spend money on vaccines, personal protective equipment, all this sort of stuff. But it really was the diseases of affluence, heart disease, diabetes, obesity, that were significant risk factors for this. And that's not to shame or malign or any of that. It's just to acknowledge the fact that many of these things that we've been dealing with as a country, and wealthy countries deal with more so than poorer countries, are significant risk factors for potential future pathogens. So we spend $4 trillion on healthcare every year. If we took just 1% of that and said, hey, look, we're just going to be really serious about not just taking care of a heart attack after it's happened, but we're going to be really serious about preventing these things, not just in language, but for real. 1% of our healthcare budget, we probably prevent 50 to 60% of illness in this country. So this hopefully serves as a wake-up call for that as well.
And again, that new book, World War C, Lessons from the COVID-19 Pandemic and How to Prepare for the Next One. Dr. Gupta, always want to make sure and let folks know where they can find the book is available now. And then, of course, everything you've got going social media-wise as well, my friend.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, you can buy the book at most bookstores and Amazon, and follow me on Twitter at Dr. Sanjay Gupta, on Instagram, and I'll just keep writing and putting information out there. I always try and put information out there in a way that I easily understand it, my family can easily understand it, and I hope that if people get a chance to read it, they can understand it as well.
That's right. Well, Dr. Gupta, always great to visit with you, sir. I hope you have a great rest of your week and look forward to catching up again real soon.
You got it. Thanks for having me.
Now, not all sounds are free. And here we came up with a list of sounds that you've heard that you might not have realized are actually trademarked. They are, number 1, the Mockingjay whistle from the Hunger Games. Number 2, the 2-note gong on Law & Order. Number 3, Homer Simpson's dope. Number 4, Darth Vader's breathing in Star Wars. Number 5, the sound of the lightsabers too. Number 6, Tarzan's yell, as heard in the 1932 movie Tarzan the Ape Man. Number 7, the Aflac duck's quack. Number 8, AOL's You've Got Mail greeting. Number 9, the Pillsbury Doughboy giggle. Did you know his official name is actually Poppin' Fresh? I did. And number 10, the ticking stopwatch from 60 Minutes. Got a new single we'll be talking about, plus coming out of pandemic, what it's like as a musician as well. Kevin McCoy from the Kevin McCoy Band. And first off, Kevin, great to visit with you, brother.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, Cameron.
Now, like I mentioned, we were digging into the single before we started the interview, and we had some pretty good feedback from it too, and shared that with you a little bit ago. What has the feedback been like for you so far with Blue Collar?
It has been tremendous. Everything positive. People are really enjoying this song and can relate to it, which is exactly what I wanted when I wrote that. When I wrote this, excuse me.
Now, how has the songwriting been for you this last couple of years? Was this written pre-pandemic, or was this inspired in that off time as well?
Actually, this song was written right before the pandemic, and which I was lucky to get that in, because it was pretty close to March 12th or whatever day we stopped being normal. The new normal that we know now. So I was lucky in that regard, and just took my time with production and things like that.
What has been the coolest thing now as things are opening up? I know there's still precautions in place. What's it like now for the fan? What do you see different in the fan today?
Well, it's funny you asked that. The difference is it's almost like there is no tomorrow kind of mentality. People are more lively. People are more energetic when it comes to even regional acts like myself. People are excited to get out. I think, and that's, being a musician, I love it because, I have been on stage where everybody's looking at me like I'm in a zoo. you know. And nowadays they're a little more lively, you know, YOLO and things like that. They're just a little more fun. Crowds are a little more fun.
Now, Kevin, where did the music come into your life in the first place? Where were you first introduced to the love of music in your life?
Well, I will tell you, music's always been in my wheelhouse. It's always been around me. I believe I remember listening to Boxcar Willie at the Grand Ole Opry, and I turned to my parents and said, "That's what I want to do when I grow up." Yes, and they were like, "You want to dress like a hobo?" I'm like, no. Just kidding. But I went to like a performing arts school, kind of like a fame school, when I was in elementary school, and then I just kept going. I was in musical theater and things like that because, you know, back in the 80s, there really wasn't any place to, you know, there was no Voice, American Idol, things like that. So, you know, to be on stage, you pretty much had to do musicals and, you know, things like that, touring companies. But you know, but I wouldn't change it for anything. It landed me where I'm at. But I've always been active in music, that's for sure. Growing up as a kid, you know, all my friends listened to Michael Jackson and, you know, Lionel Richie, things like that. And at my house, I was listening to Tanya Tucker and Conway Twitty and Kenny Rogers and, of course, Elvis. So, broad spectrum of music, which I believe most people are like that.
And I know that you've had the opportunity to open for some great artists. And whenever you get the chance to open, what are some of the things that you're hoping to pull from those opportunities and those experiences as well?
Well, one, fans. You know, the more people I get in front of, the more you know, possible fans that I can get. But usually it's the things not to do, you know. That's my favorite thing to ask, you know, like Tracy Byrd and Eddie Montgomery, who's a Kentucky guy. And the funny stories, and now they're funny, you know, when they happened to these fellas, it wasn't so funny. Right. But the success that they've had, you know, they're like, well, I'm going to tell you, buddy, you know. And the stories, I'm like, wow. So I guess we're lucky. Us independent artists are a little lucky.
And Kevin, what was it like the first time back after having to take time away for the pandemic, not being able to play a show? What was it like taking that stage for the first time again?
Oh, it's actually indescribable. I was so thankful and so relieved to be back on stage. And I think one of the first big shows was we played at the Kicker Country Stampede in Kansas, Topeka, and which I gained a lot of fans from Oklahoma, which was fantastic. Yeah, man. But it was just so refreshing to see people back together, not being so afraid, because there for a while, I think that most people were afraid to, you know, go out and things like that. But hey, the sun came back out, and you know, we were together again. I was just ecstatic, and like I said, relieved. There for a while, it was very bleak.
Now, how has that time affected how you've changed or set goals moving forward, maybe for the rest of 2021? How has the goal setting changed for you?
Well, I tell you what, we kicked the fire up, that's for sure. You know, we put the pedal to the metal. Me and my team, we're not sitting back waiting to release songs. We're not sitting back waiting for people to contact us to go play. We're really going after it. And every single time I'm on stage, I leave it all out on the table. Because I think the people that come out to see us now, they deserve that. Yeah. They deserve every single ounce of energy me and the boys in my band have, you know.
That is right. Now, Kevin, if folks want to keep up with, I know we talked about the new single Blue Collar. If they want to keep up with that, the other music, your upcoming tour dates and all that, where's the best place for folks to keep up with it?
You can check out www.kevinmccoyband.com. We have Instagram. We have, of course, Facebook. We have all the social media things. I even started doing TikTok, and I don't really understand it, but
I don't think anybody does.
Yeah, it's one of those funny things in life, and I kind of get sucked down the old rabbit hole once in a while with that. Like, it's been an hour and a half. I've been on TikTok for an hour and a half.
It's just like the old Facebook hole you used to go down to, right?
Oh yeah. Social media has taught me patience and has taught me regard, I guess. You know, because it's very easy to lose yourself and lose track of time while sitting there staring at your phone, watching the world go by.
That's right, but we couldn't live without it.
No, I don't see the young kids anymore doing that. I tell you what, it's funny because I was walking down the street in Nashville, Tennessee, just the other day. One of my buddies was playing down Broadway, and I was walking down the street, and I was looking at just, you know, like a panoramic view of everyone, and I say 80% of the people were staring down at their phone while walking. And I thought to myself, if the good Lord Jesus came back down, everyone would miss it because they're staring at their screens.
There's a song to be written there, Kevin.
Hey, you know what? That is at least a line.
Well, again, the new single, Blue Collar, be sure and check it out. And you can also, like you said, visit him online at kevinmccoyband.com. Kevin, been great to visit with you today, brother, and look forward to hopefully catching you face-to-face real soon.
Yeah, I have a handful of fans in Oklahoma saying, hey, we have a place for you to stay, man. Come on out here, Hoss. But, well, thank you. I want to personally thank you on behalf of my team and my radio team, Tribe, for one, spinning Blue Collar, and two, supporting all the artists, not just me, but all the Music Row artists, and being such a big part of Music Row Radio. And once again, thanks to the listeners for asking for Blue Collar. I really appreciate it.
That's awesome. Well, Kevin, brother, it's been great to visit with you, and I hope you have a great rest of your week.
All right, I will do that. I got to go write some songs and, rinse and repeat.
If you're going to steal your kids' Halloween candy, here are the ones they'll be most upset about. Because someone polled 700 kids between 8 and 14 and gave them a series of candy matchups. For example, what's better, Kit Kat or Snickers? Well, all 76 candies in the poll were then ranked by winning percentage, and according to the results, here are the 10 Halloween candies that kids like best. Number 1, Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. They won 76% of their matchups. Number 2, M&M's, 73%. Number 3, Milky Ways, 71%. Number 4, Hershey Bars, 70%. Number 5, Kit Kats, 68%. Number 6, Gummy Bears, 67%. Number 7, Hershey's Kisses, 67%. Number 8, Reese's Pieces, 66%. Number 9, Peanut M&M's, 66%. And number 10, Twix, 66%. Now Snickers, Starburst, Skittles, Crunch Bars, Jolly Ranchers, and Nerds also made the top 20. And of the 76 candies they looked at, black licorice came in last. Now the rest of the 5 worst Halloween treats are sugar-free gum, an apple, mixed nuts, and mints. It is our monthly visit with our good friend Meathead Goldwyn. He is not only a new National Barbecue Hall of Fame member, he is a national treasure. I'll go to the bank. He's a national treasure, a barbecue icon, the creme de la creme, and my favorite that I came up with today. He is the corps d'elite when it comes to barbecue. Meathead Goldwyn, and Meathead, I told you to prepare yourself for it.
Well, then how come I still got to pick up the dog poop in the yard and take out the trash?
We haven't won your wife over with the idea yet.
No, she's not convinced.
Well, first off, you are now a Hall of Fame member since last time we talked, and
Yes.
I wanted to start off. I know we got something else we're going to delve into. Your thoughts on being a Hall of Fame member now, and what's been going on for you since we spoke last.
Well, it's quite an honor. There are only 25 living members of the Barbecue Hall of Fame, and they include some of the great barbecue cooks and restaurateurs and competitors out there. And I don't know that I deserve to be in their company, but I'll take it. It was quite a very pleasant surprise. But not totally a surprise. Our website, AmazingRibs.com, has very great reach. I mean, we have over 1 million visitors a month, so we've probably taught more people about barbecue than anybody. And then on my relationships with people like you, so I've done a little bit to get the word out there about how much fun it is and how to do it right. And of course, there's my book, which is sold almost 250,000 copies. So I guess that's what got me in.
You're so humble about your abilities, but we all know Meathead.
I'll tell you the real benefit for being in the Hall of Fame. When the goofballs show up on YouTube or in Wikipedia and want to argue with me, I can always say, dude, when you're in the Hall of Fame, you can argue with me.
I love it. Now, whenever we were talking about what we were going to discuss today, we all use it. We all use it in our cooking, and salt. I wanted to just get your thoughts. I know the FDA released some guidelines yesterday, and we want to talk a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, I call salt the magic rock. It's a quandary. It is essential for us. Now, I'm not going to dwell on the health aspects because I'm not a health expert or a diet expert. And in fact, I don't know that many people are. But we know it's essential for our nervous system. Our nerves function because salt transmits electricity. And we know that it's crucial that we eat salt because our body doesn't manufacture salt. We have to consume it. And salt is in all of our body parts. It's in all of our fluids. It's in our tears. It's in our mucus. It's in our saliva. It's in our blood. It's in our semen. It's everywhere in our body. So you have to consume it. But if you consume too much, it is believed it can cause blood pressure problems and cardiovascular disease. So the FDA is concerned that we're consuming too much. Their guideline is 1 teaspoon or 2,300 milligrams per day. And they point out that things like some Quiznos subs have 3,700 milligrams in it. Wow. In just one sub, that the 9-inch pizza from whose pizza is it? It's the Pizza Hut personal 9-inch Panormus pizza has 3,600 milligrams, which is almost double our daily allocation. They claim that 70% of the salt we consume is in processed foods, manufactured foods, and foods from restaurants, and that means only 30% of it is coming from what we cook with. And that's good because salt is not only crucial for our bodies and our health, but salt is a vital part of good cooking. Salt, I call it the magic rock because one of the things that salt does is when you sprinkle it on meat, for example, it can penetrate very deep into meat and it can alter the structure of the proteins so that it helps it hold on to moisture. So salt helps make meat more moist and a little more tender. Whereas garlic and sugar and all your other spices, their molecules are too large. Salt is just 2 little atoms, sodium and chloride. And when they get wet on the surface of meat, they get an electric charge and they go deep. But all the other molecules, sugar is 23 atoms. They can't penetrate very far beyond the surface. There's little tiny microscopic pores and cracks and crevices in the surface of meat, and they can get in there. but they rarely go more than a 1/16 to an eighth of an inch deep. And you can prove this by get yourself a turkey breast or a hunk of pork loin and sprinkle every herb and spice on your spice rack on it, cook it, and then slice into it. And you'll see, and if you taste, you won't taste any garlic or sugar down in the center. They don't penetrate. You got to be careful when you slice that your knife doesn't push it down in there. But if you taste that core sample, you won't taste it in there. So salt is a treatment for the inside of the meat, whereas all the other stuff is a treatment for the outside of the meat. And that's a really important culinary concept. And the rule of thumb that I like to give, now we standardize in all my recipes on Morton coarse kosher salt. And that's not because Morton pays us anything. It's just that Morton's, it's got a nice large grain size and it's easier to sprinkle than table salt, which is a smaller. Right. It's also half as much sodium as table salt. So a pinch of Morton's is half as much sodium as table salt. And our rule of thumb is a half a teaspoon of Morton's coarse kosher salt per pound of meat. And that will penetrate. It will do the protein trick. And it turns up the dial. It amplifies flavor, turns the dial up to 11. So salt is crucial in cooking, but you want to use it judiciously, and you want to not worry about using salt in the kitchen. You want to worry about the salt that you get from processed foods, from packaged foods, and from restaurants.
Well, one of my concerns about salt, and I'm glad you haven't covered it yet, is I've always been concerned about putting salt on the meat before I put it on the grill. I was always concerned and have heard people say that it dries the meat out, especially on the grill. Is there any truth to that?
No, that's an old husband's tale. It's a myth. The salt will penetrate, and it actually does the opposite. It retains moisture. Now, if you sprinkle a lot of rubs, when you buy a bottle of rub, it's also a mixture of salt and herbs and spices. And when you sprinkle that on, you may see liquid come out of the meat, but it's not the salt that's pulling it out. It's the other stuff that pulls it to the surface because the other stuff can't go in. The salt is going in. So it's a really good idea to do what we call dry brining. And dry brining is sprinkle the salt on a few hours before you cook. It depends on the thickness. If you've got a 1 inch thick steak, an hour or two before you cook, the salt will penetrate. It will do its magic. If you've got a slab of ribs, which is thin, an hour, maybe half hour before you cook. But it doesn't matter when you put the other stuff on there because it can't penetrate. So you can put it on just before you cook. If you've got something very, very thick, like a pork loin or a turkey breast, give it several hours, 6 hours or overnight, but it will not dry it out at all.
What are some of the other misconceptions that you've heard and had to deal with in the grilling process about salt?
Well, that's the main one. And then the health concerns. People are worried. I know there's a member of my family who has tried to cut salt out of her diet, and you can't. I mean, in fact, if you do, you can be subject to some serious illnesses. Mm-hmm. As I said, you need salt for your nervous system to function. And almost all of our recipes contain salt, but in a judicious fashion. That half a teaspoon per pound is not a lot. And it won't get you into trouble dietary wise. And I think these latest numbers from FDA bear that out. So use the salt, use it judiciously, not a lot, just sprinkle it on the way you would normally do it at the table. If it tastes too salty, you're using too much.
Now, I've also, you talked about the salt. Have you done any of the salt crusted fish on the grill? Is that something that you've delved into as well? I'm sure.
Yeah, of course. I've tried it all. It's fun. You can take a piece of beef or fish and get some salt. You get large grain salt, and you get it wet. You turn it into like a slurry, a mud, and you can pack it around fish or a steak, and just drop it right on top of the coals. You don't even need to put it on the grates. You put it right on top of the coals, and it protects it from charring, from burning. And it does allow salt to penetrate. What's fascinating about it is the process makes the meat a little on the salty side, but not a lot. You would think it makes it really over the top salty. It doesn't. It seems to regulate itself during the cooking process. There's another cool trick that you can do. You can buy Himalayan salt blocks. And they're like 8 inches by 8 inches and 2 inches thick, and it's a pink salt, and that's not to be confused with pink salt, which is used in curing meats like bacon. This is a different kind of salt. And you can get these blocks and heat them up in the oven or on the grill, and then you can bring them to the table and put it in the center of the table on a pad so you don't burn the table. And you can cook on them just like you would, in a fondue or something. You can put slices of meat on there. And it's a lot of fun. I mean, you get the thin slice of meat and it just sizzles away and browns, and it does absorb salt, but not too much. Fascinating. It's kind of a self-regulating process. I love playing with the salt block because that's participatory cooking there.
Who knew the pink sea salt parties? Who knew that was even a thing?
Yeah. You just sit around. I did that once. I got my hands on real Japanese Kobe beef. Now, there's a lot of stuff that they call Kobe in the U.S., but it's probably not. It's from the same breeds of the animal that comes from Japan. It tends to have a lot of fat. And because it has a lot of fat, it's very juicy, very tender, and very flavorful. But real Kobe beef is very, very hard to find in the U.S. And I got my hands on some. And so it was like I had 2 ribeyes. And so I had a couple of friends over, and I got that salt block thing going, and I sliced it into thin slices, and we just sat around and took our time because this stuff is so rich. It's like eating a stick of butter. I mean, now we're talking a health hazard. But it's just unctuous. It just really coats the mouth, and it's marvelous flavor. It's something, if you get a chance to do it, it's very expensive. But it's one of those flavors that put it on your bucket list if you can afford it and you have a chance, like you're in a restaurant that's offering Kobe. And sometimes they serve it with a hot rock or a hot metal platen, so you can cook it right there at your table like that. It's worth trying because it's an extraordinary flavor.
Now, are there, I know that there's different varieties of fish do different with salt with other things. Are there any particular ones that you like to do the salt crusting on a fish? Is there a certain variety?
No, I've done it for the fun of it to try it, but I don't do it much anymore. Because one of the problems with it is, and we've talked about this before, but it bears repeating, is when food browns, it browns from infrared radiation, and it browns from glowing coals or flame. You can't brown a steak by putting it in the oven, but you can brown a steak by putting it in a hot pan, or you can brown a steak by putting it over glowing coals or over flames on a gas grill. That's infrared radiation from the flames and the coals. And that browning is the chemistry of the food changing. It's called the Maillard reaction, and there's a secondary reaction that takes place called caramelization. And both of them turn the food brown. And you see it when you toast a slice of bread. It browns. And brown flavors have a lot more complexity, a lot more interest. Toasted bread has more complexity than plain white bread. And the same thing with meat. I mean, when you do a beef roast, what's the best part of the beef roast? The end cut, So you can't get that browning when you wrap it in salt. It's more like steaming it. And that's really kind of what that crust does, is holds in the moisture. And now there's nothing wrong with steaming food because it's an extraordinarily moist product when you're done. But I'm a barbecue guy. I'm a grill guy. I love my brown food.
Something to be said about that. Now, also, I know we talked Hall of Fame induction, all that taking place, but we still, what's the latest on the sauces and rubs? I see them over there by your book. I always want to give an opportunity to talk about the progress there as well.
we're probably going to have them on the market this month. Probably when I talk to you next month, I'll be able to tell folks that it's available. They're not quite ready yet. We're working with the manufacturer. They're in Kansas City, although the sauce is being made in Tulsa.
That's awesome.
By Head Country. So we've contracted with Head Country. We gave them our recipe, and they've made the sauce for us. So hopefully it'll be out this month. It's been a fascinating process. We've never done this before. Going through, here's our recipe, tasting it. Well, that doesn't taste like my recipe. Adjustments, more salt, less salt. We had to adjust the salt in it. It's a little low on salt. You have to have salt in the rubs because people don't know about the process we just talked about. You add the salt separate from the other stuff. You got to put them all together in one bottle.
Right.
But we've kept it on the low side, right? Because, you can always add salt, but you can't take it away. So it's been a fascinating process. It's not for the faint of heart, but we're very happy with the end product when it comes out, and I'll make sure you get some.
There you go. And we always talk about the grill. It's become a favorite part of mine is letting you talk about what your latest veggie creation is. What veggie grilling we got to talk about for October.
I'm in the Chicago area, and so it's coming on wintertime. And my wife is a master gardener. I mean, there actually is a degree you can get called master gardener. And she's been bringing in eggplants, and the last of the tomatoes are almost done, and squash. And we've been having fun with the squash, slicing it into thin slices, and painting it. Often I do like a teriyaki paint, a little sweetness in there on the grill. Eggplant, you can do in fact, I know I've mentioned this on the show before, but on our website, AmazingRibs.com, and in my book, Meathead, there's a recipe for eggplant parmesan on the grill, and it's marvelous. And it's, I like it better than the standard eggplant where it's fried, because eggplant just soaks up the oil. Mm-hmm. And this is very, very little oil. It's got a homemade tomato sauce and cheeses on. Oh, it's just wonderful stuff. Veggies on the grill are a lot of fun, but it's tailgate season, and maybe that's what we talk about next month. It's time to start getting ready for. Getting ready for it. We're mid-season already. I've been following Oklahoma this year. A little bit of controversy out there last week, but. Golly, they're on fire, aren't they?
We survived. We survived a couple of games.
Yeah.
Still undefeated. We'll see how long that lasts, right?
They're ranked in the top 5, aren't they?
Yep, number 4.
Yeah. So it'll be fun. I'm a Gator, and you guys whooped up on us last year in the bowl games, but that's because our 3 top receivers decided they didn't want to play because they're getting ready for the pros.
Because they knew the Sooners were coming to town. That's what it was. Come on, Meathead. Well, Meathead, always want to make sure and give folks the website address. I know they can find more info about the sauces, the rubs, as those become available. The book, Meathead, and everything else, my friend.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, website's AmazingRibs.com. And if you Google just about anything related to barbecue, they'll take you to us.
That is right. Well, Meathead, always good to visit with you, my friend. And we're already, I guess we'll talk some mid-season tailgating next month.
Yeah.
Now, this is pretty interesting, especially on the heels of all that news about how Facebook has known its algorithms aren't good for people. A study in Australia found 46 distinct ways that social media is bad for us. Everything from affecting our mental health to security issues and how it makes us less productive at work. And they split them up into 6 different categories. Number 1, the cost of social exchange. It's a catch-all for things like wasting time and energy on social media, and also psychological harm like making us more jealous and anxious. Number 2, annoying content. That includes anything that annoys, upsets, or irritates you. So basically anything you didn't want or expect to see on there. Number 3, privacy concerns. meaning the real threat of your personal information being repurposed or shared with third parties. Number 4, security threats. That's only mostly about scammers or other people who might lie or deceive you on social media. Number 5, cyberbullying. That one's pretty straightforward. Anything that has to do with harassment, abuse, lying, stalking, or spreading rumors. And number 6, low performance, meaning it tends to distract us and makes us less productive at work or in school. Friend of the show and man life, he's an influencer, a digital media mogul. There's so many ways we could describe him. Jason Peterson back with us, and first off, Jason, thank you so much for taking the time.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Now, Jason, I know last time we visited, we kind of talked about the global music market and how Go Digital and what you're doing kind of fits into the grand scheme of things. And I wanted to talk kind of the streaming wise. How do you see streaming as a result of what we've all gone through in the pandemic? How do you see that moving forward in the coming years?
That's a great question. A lot of interesting things happened with streaming during the pandemic. So for music, every day looked more like the weekend for people in terms of listening habits, the playlists they're listening to, the time of day they were listening, the amount of listening. So that was interesting. And then on video, we saw just a tremendous increase in consumption. And that has largely stayed. So that's been very healthy for the video streaming market.
Now, how do you see streaming with what we've seen with cable and satellite and stuff like that? I know a lot of folks don't have cable or satellite anymore, and a lot are going to the streaming services. Do you see that being maybe a downfall for the regular cable that we've known so far, if you will?
That's an incredible question. So going back to the 1980s and even prior, right, we had 3 major broadcasters, 4 with Fox, then came cable. And it exploded to hundreds of channels. And the beautiful thing about the cable television industry in the United States and abroad was it was built on the business model of we as consumers paying for all the content we do not watch. That's important. So let me repeat that. We as consumers paying for all the content we do not watch. So here in the United States, for example, every cable bundle has ESPN. You're paying something between $5 and $7 a month in your cable bundle for ESPN, whether or not you watch 1 minute of ESPN during your monthly billing cycle. And this is a healthy thing for consumers and for the industry, because what happens is it guarantees income for content distributors and producers. And as a result, we as content distributors and producers can go out and make significant investments in programming, whether it's sports, whether it's original, narrative, long form, or episodic programming. This content's expensive, and knowing that we have a guaranteed revenue stream at scale is extraordinarily helpful for the ecosystem. Now, what happened with the internet and streaming is that, with the rare exception of Ajit Pai, the FCC chairman after Tom Wheeler during the Trump administration, with the rare exception of him, the internet has been neutral, meaning that Verizon spent $30 billion building Fios, their fiber optic to the home internet solution that provides gigabit internet speeds to the home. And anybody who wants to offer content to that home can ride on the top of that wire without having to pay Verizon for the infrastructure. The internet's neutral. Verizon can't block Netflix from reaching a home that Verizon spent a ton of money to put in a fiber optic cable to. Mm-hmm. And that disrupted the entire business model. Because now people could get content from competitors who had an entirely different cost base than the cable company. And that caused what I like to call the great unbundling, right? When now we have a la carte channels available, you've got Disney Plus and HBO Max and Netflix and Amazon, and everything under the sun is available a la carte. But it's actually a worse value proposition to the customer, because the average customer, if you look at PwC and Deloitte studies, watch something like 13 channels a month traditionally on cable. How much would it cost, Cameron, if you bought 13 a la carte channels, Disney Plus, HBO, whatever, It would be more than the cable subscription.
Right.
So the bundle is good for consumers. The bundle is good for distributors and producers. And I predict we will go back through a rebundling. The delivery mechanism will be over the top. It'll be on the internet side of the pipe. And that will help us have better user experiences, right? We have cloud DVRs now, and we've got, these really slick, YouTube TV has a really slick user interface.
Mm-hmm.
These are things that cable companies weren't traditionally great at. So I think we'll have a rebundling in an internet delivered video streaming environment. That's the end game. I think that's going to be a lot better for the consumer and a lot better for the industry.
So do you think that the cable and the television sides, they've taken kind of cues from the music distribution platforms to kind of come to where they're at right now?
Music definitely went first. File sizes are smaller, so when network speeds were still developing, it was natural that music would be the first to go digital. There are some significant differences in the structure of the industry. So, for example, with rare exception, there's not really exclusive content in music on any given platform. Apple and Spotify have the same content. Whereas in the video environment, right, exclusive content is the differentiator. You have originals at Netflix and HBO and Disney and Showtime, et cetera, that are intended to drive subscribership and subscriber retention because you can't get them anywhere else. And if they're culturally significant, people are going to want to watch them, right? They subscribe to HBO for Game of Thrones, or they subscribe to Billions for Homeland, or they subscribe to Showtime for Billions or Homeland. And so that's a very different model.
That is right. Now, how do you see things? I know that you also in the pandemic time, you guys have picked up the Yoga Works, and I love how you guys have kind of changed the mindset around that business model as well.
Thank you for the kind words. Yeah, Yoga Works was the nation's largest in-studio yoga business. They created yoga as we know it in the United States in the 1980s, and when the pandemic happened, they obviously had to shut their studios, and we had the opportunity to buy them, and we transformed them into what I like to say is we aspire to be the Peloton of yoga, right? A digital native, technology-enabled service. People can log in and do live or on-demand yoga from any device anywhere in the world. And I've been talking to 2 to 3 customers a day. I've talked to folks in Oman and Italy and France, all over the United States. And the refrain that I keep getting from them is they love being able to use any device. It's very common to use an iPad to do yoga anytime, any place. They could be traveling. They could not have the time to go to the studio. They could be in their office and just need a break for 20 minutes to recharge, and they can do yoga. And yoga is an important part of everyone's movement diet. And I firmly believe, and there's a big study over many decades at Harvard that strongly suggests that when we stop moving, we start dying. So continuing to move and having a healthy movement diet is part and parcel to having a healthy, long life.
And Jason, over the pandemic, obviously businesses have had to reimagine, reinvent things. What are maybe some of the biggest inspirations that you've had, or maybe some aha moments that maybe led to some new ideas as of late?
Wow, what an interesting question. It's been fascinating to see who was vulnerable and who was not vulnerable. And on the other hand, who was able to go to this work from home, remote work paradigm easily and who wasn't. So my favorite entrepreneur, a guy I've always wanted to meet and never have, is Richard Branson. Yeah, one of the reasons I like Richard so much is that he appears to always have fun in everything he's doing. But it was also a hard time for a lot of his companies, and he just launched a cruise line. And one of the things Virgin always does really well is create this user experience that is exceptional and it's on brand. And he's had these 1 or 2 enormous ships sitting in Florida, I'm sure costing an absolute fortune to maintain, and they've not been able to run cruises, right? So on the one hand, it reinforced the notion to me that being in the intellectual property business is a great place to be. It's just less risky. Now, that said, when you're in the intellectual property business, it's really the law and the courts that create the value. So there's an adage in real estate that if you're involved in real estate, you're involved in politics. I think that applies to intellectual property. I've learned now through pandemic and pre-pandemic that if you're involved in intellectual property, you've got to be involved in politics, right? We're in Washington. We're lobbying for the law. We're using the court systems to try and uphold the law. So that's been interesting. And then, a lot of old line companies, friends of mine, even some companies we bought, they had a very on-premise, in-office culture, whereas Go Digital generally is all in the public cloud. We're completely diversified all over the world. We have people all over the world. And so it's for us, it was not disruptive at all. When everyone went work from home, we were like, fine, close the office. We never went back. And we have 500 people. But a lot of companies, that was really challenging. And so I think moving to the cloud and virtualizing everything in the cloud in a secure way, security is really important, is a notion that has become very, very important.
And for me, I've been around the music industry and the radio side of things for about 20 years. And you talk about people talk about the cloud. It still makes me a bit nervous. How do you bring the idea of the cloud? I know you talked about being safe, having all the safeguards in place. How do you make an old dog like me feel a little bit more comfortable in that, if you will?
Well, I think it comes down to people, right? We have to have the right people in your ecosystem to help you do that. And I remember before public cloud was what it is today, we actually owned and operated our own private cloud, and it was inside of a data center company's facilities called Equinix, which is basically a company that sits at the intersection of the private networks that create the internet. The internet is nothing, by the way, but an interconnection of private networks, right? You've got AT&T's networks and WorldCom's networks, and you've got these big backhaul providers they basically own the freeways. Then you have these guys that own the last mile of the home. It's just an interconnection of private networks. And so we've evolved from private cloud to public cloud. And so I think it's about people. It's about having the right people in your orbit that can help you do that. Security is really important, right? We do 2- and 3-factor authentication. Even having a text message come to your phone as a second factor isn't really that secure. I've heard cases where somebody, a criminal knows somebody's phone number, and they've been able just to go down to the phone store, some telecom provider, and literally switch your number to their phone and move it to a new SIM card on their phone. And if they crack your email, they can now send that 2-factor authentication code to your phone that they control. And so we use a thing called YubiKeys, which is a little USB dongle you have to plug in. There's also RSA tokens that you can put on your keychain, and they have a algorithm that shows a new 6-digit code every 30 seconds or so. And so that, those are important security protocols. But it's about people, find the right people in your orbit.
And Jason, how hard is it to stay on top of the security side of things? I know that everything's always changing, and I think maybe that's for us older in the audience, that's what's kind of a little bit scary, is because everything tends to change. And how hard is it to keep up with all the ever-changing environment?
It's hard. I'm surprised. I guess we had a certain scale at some point, but I'm surprised at the complicated schemes that hit our company. Just the other day, we had an important YouTube channel get hijacked because one of our employees in Colombia, somebody somehow installed some malware in their computer that was able to gather enough information. I don't know if it was keystroke logging or what, but it gathered enough information that they were able to log into one of our a professional YouTube account, and lock us out, basically. And they took all the content down. They put up some kind of crypto, promotional materials, and it was a whole problem. Luckily, that person didn't have financial system access or anything like that. But you have to be really careful. If you get an email, ask yourself, is this somebody I know? In the line of the email where it says the name, always open that up to see what the actual address is, because they can spoof the name, but they can't spoof the address. And if it says Jason Peterson and it's J123 at, some domain you've never heard of, that's not actually me. That's somebody trying to act like they're me. So always check that address, check the vernacular, the way it's written. Does it sound like me? If you know me, you know what my voice sounds like. Is that the way I would write? Always use two-factor authentication. If you can use a hard authentication asset like a YubiKey or an RSA token, that's great, because then it requires they have physical possession of that. And don't visit websites that are questionable, right? That's another thing. Don't download apps that are questionable, that are outside the app ecosystem, the Google Play Store or Apple Store. And when there's a financial transaction involved, call the person to make sure that what you were sent, if you're wiring money or whatever, is in fact correct. And don't send passwords over email. Right? If you send somebody a link, here's here's my data room, send them the password over WhatsApp, or send them the password over some other, Slack or some other message, right? So you don't have all the information that somebody needs in one place to crack your security.
That is right. Just a couple of ideas to be thinking of out there. And Jason, I know if folks want to find more information about Go Digital, about Yoga Works and all that, where's the best place to keep up with the latest info that you guys have?
GoDigital.com is the domain. My LinkedIn is LinkedIn / Jason Pet, JASONPET, and you can find me on Instagram at USC Jason Peterson.
All right. Well, Jason, it is always great to visit with you, sir. I love getting into the knowledge base that you've got. Appreciate you sharing some of that with us today, and hopefully, brother, we can catch up again real soon.
Appreciate your time. We'll talk soon.
If you're still working from home, a year and a half later, you've probably gone through two distinct stages: finding out that it's worse than expected, and then figuring out how to make it better than expected. But a new survey of people who are still working remotely, some aspects of communal office life can't be replicated. 7 in 10 people say they feel more isolated than they did in the office, and more than 1/3 miss social events, including face-to-face meetings, 39%, office celebrations, 35%, and after-work happy hours, 34%. 63% of people said they feel less engaged with their team, and get this, 2/3 say they work directly with someone who they wouldn't be able to pick out of a lineup and recognize by name only. And that's a little hard to believe after less than 2 years of working remote, unless the lineup was packed with lookalikes. But it makes more sense if you're in a new job or are now working with people you haven't met in person. A majority of people working from home say that some of these issues could be fixed with better quality communication. A friend of the show as well. I can definitely call her a friend of the show. Paige King Johnson with us. And Paige, always good to see you, my friend.
So good to see you. I so wish that this whole past year and a half, almost 2 years, just wasn't a thing and we could see each other in person. But I'm grateful to be able to see you at least a little bit.
That's right. And Paige obviously got some new music to talk about, and this exciting times. This one, you got some big name writers on this one too. Tell our listeners a little bit about. Let me see. Is it Baby Don't? Baby Don't. Yeah.
Baby Don't.
I'm like, is it Baby Don't or Please Don't? It's Baby Don't.
Yeah. No. So this song is the first song that I ever recorded that I was not a writer on myself, which was kind of new territory for me. But I've been working with Miss Pam Tillis over the past year or so now, and she's been a friend first and a mentor second to me. And she knew I was kind of looking for music and working on some new stuff. And she came across this song and she sent it to me and she goes, "Paige, I just heard this song and it sounds just like you." She said, "If you don't record it, you're crazy." And so I was like, well, maybe I should listen to it. And so I listened to it and I pulled it up and it said on the thing, it said writers, Lori McKenna, who is my top number one, she's the queen of my songwriting world. And then Liz Rose and Hillary Lindsay. And I was like, there is no way. But somehow there was a way. And I fell in love with the song and we took it into the studio. And it was such a fun one to bring to life in the studio. So we knew that, this one had to see the light of day.
And the feel, the energy of it as well. It's just a feel-good song. And coming out of what we're coming out of, I mean, Paige, we got to have a little feel-good, don't we?
Yes, you can preach that one over and over again.
Now, what is, some folks have had a difficult time in pandemic. I know you've had a lot of successes in pandemic, a lot of big things happen in life for you. And how does that make your mentality change looking back, if you will?
I feel like, overall, this whole time in COVID world has not been the most ideal thing for everybody, but I'm very much an optimist, and I try to, see the light and everything. And so there are a lot of positive things that I do think have come out of COVID. And I think a lot of people will be, quick to admit to that. We all kind of needed a reset, I think. And so it gave me time to be able to get out of Nashville for a little while. And I got to come back to my roots in North Carolina and spend time with family and kind of like reset myself as an artist as well. And I definitely think that has influenced my writing and the way that when I got back into the studio, kind of the way that we approached music. And so it's given me a little bit of, a refresh on everything and who I am as an artist and where I came from. And, getting back to your roots does a lot of that for you.
Now, how has inspiration, I mean, I talk to songwriters, whether it's pre-pandemic, during pandemic, or whatever, how has maybe the inspiration or the ideas, how have those changed in your mind over since we last spoke?
Yeah, well, there's definitely a lot more because we had a lot of time to be able to sit down and write. And my inspiration comes from those times whenever I am still and I'm able to do stuff. And so, throughout this pandemic, I've made myself try to get outside, go on walks and all that stuff. And I really find that that's where my inspiration comes from a lot of times. And I'll always have my phone with me and I'll be walking and I'll be, typing something down, or I'll be singing something into my phone and like looking around thinking, all these people probably think I'm crazy. But that's where a lot of the inspiration has come from for me. And this time has really been very, not inspirational because we weren't doing a lot of things, but it gave me time to be able to kind of like, okay, what kind of songs do I want to say? And what kind of stories do I have to tell? And I ended up writing like 85 songs over the last, in a year's time span, from March 2020 to March 2021. And then over the summer, my touring schedule thankfully kind of picked back up. So I haven't been writing as much, but for that year, it was crazy. And, you get some crap songs that come out of it, but you get some good ones too. And some of my favorite ones that I've ever written came out of that year of writing.
Now, how much are you relying on technology now that you weren't relying on before?
Aren't we all? And like realizing how ignorant we are when it comes to technology. Yep. That's been my situation of like, okay, here's another learning curve we have coming our way.
That's awesome. Now, as we get toward the end of 2021, obviously you've got the new single to talk about, and then obviously working into 2022. How is the game changing as we set to wrap up 2021 for you?
Well, so obviously we're putting out this single, and then we have a music video coming with the single that'll be later in the fall, which I'm really excited about. I was able to work with Miss Pam Tillis again on this video, and she brought such a different aspect to this video, and it was a lot of fun. So I'm excited for people to be able to finally see that. And then, fingers crossed, hopefully there's a lot of new music that I have up my sleeve. So we're hoping that by the beginning of 2022 that we'll have some of those out and, working towards a bigger project.
There you go. Now, you talked about working with Pam. What have been some of the little tidbits that you've been able to pull from her that you've been able to apply? Things that maybe she was seeing in your demeanor or in your just in your everyday life that maybe wasn't coming up front, if you will?
Yeah. It's so cool to be able to have her on my side because she was and still is a woman in country music. And, there's a difference in the ways that males and females approach this in the way of touring and in the way of even like wardrobe and how you brand yourself and all that kind of stuff. And so to have her, who has been through years and years of this in the country industry, has just been such a blessing because she will kind of like bring light to things of like, oh, well, these outfits will work well for like when you're on the road, or, you can pull yourself off as, this way in music videos or in, performance videos, and it can come off well. And, she has a lot of really cool, tips and tricks, and she's a very honest woman too, so she'll call me out on stuff real quick, and I'm grateful for that because she's just you couldn't ask for anything better than that. And she believes in me enough and wants me to succeed, and so she will call me out on some things and say, I made this mistake when I was young, and if somebody would have told me, do X, Y, and Z instead, it could have saved me some heartache. So I've been really grateful for her in that way.
Now, as the single, is it set to drop tomorrow? Am I right?
Yes, it is.
What kind of rest schedule do you get? But after, do you sleep up to midnight and then wake up and you're going to go for like 3 days now?
I wish that was the case. I actually have a show tonight, so I'll be playing that and then trying to come home and come down from that and get ready for all the things. I honestly, every single like release night, whenever we're preparing for it, I'd stay up until midnight because there's always this fear in me that like the technology's going to crash and my song won't be there. I think every artist has this fear, even though it's been triple, double, quadruple checked, everything. And so I always stay up till midnight and I will like wait, and then I'll go look it up on Spotify. I'll look it up on Apple Music. I'll look it up on Google Play, Amazon, all those places. And then I just make myself go to bed, and I'm like, it'll all be here in the morning, but I need sleep. So I try to take care of myself on the front end of things.
Now, how do you emotionally prepare yourself for the day? I know that you're going to be getting you've got to know that you're going to be getting messages throughout the day and the fan reactions. And what's that like taking those in on release day as well?
I mean, you always hope that you get, those positive messages and, people singing along to it already or whatever it may be. And I'm always so grateful for those because that's the validation that we look for as artists is that, at the end of the day, we're hoping to just create music and put music out there that's relatable to people and something that they want to keep coming back to and something that they can sing to and dance to and have fun with. And so any messages or videos or anything that I get from fans and friends and family, they mean the world to me. And, people don't think that it does, but it truly does.
That is cool. Well, we've talked about this thing. I wasn't sure whether we were going to ask you to play, but I was listening to it. I'm sure you caught it as you were coming in. It's one of my favorite new songs myself, and I would be remiss if I didn't allow you to give a little tidbit to our listeners.
I think we can do that. I think we can. If I have a guitar here anyways, why not, right?
I know, right?
Yeah, so you can get it tonight at midnight. This is called Baby Don't. Don't, baby, don't pull the cork from the bottle if you don't want to talk, want to kiss, want to find out, baby, what it is, what's going on in this room, all the chemistry between me and you. Baby, don't let me linger any longer if you don't want me to fall like a domino, like a sunset sinking down in Mexico, like a drop of rain, the thunder rolls like a cowboy riding in the rodeo. Baby, don't. Don't, baby, don't. to stop, want me to stare. Don't you lean in closer, it ain't fair. Baby, don't. No, baby, if you don't. Want me to fall like a domino, like a sunset sinking down in Mexico, like a drop of rain. The thunder rolls like a cowboy riding in the rodeo. Baby, don't. Oh no, baby, don't. Don't you do it. Don't smile at me, don't move that way. Don't trip me up with the words you say. Don't pour the wine, turn the lights down low. Don't, baby, don't. Want me to fall like a domino, like a sunset sinking down in Mexico, like a drop of rain when the thunder rolls, like a cowboy riding the rodeo. Want me to fall like a domino, sunset sinking down in Mexico, like a drop of rain. The thunder rolls like a cowboy riding in the rodeo. Baby, don't. Oh no, baby, don't. Yeah, oh no, baby, don't. Yeah. No, baby, don't. Baby, don't.
There you go. There you go. A little preview. You can't find it anywhere till midnight tonight except for here. How about that?
Yes.
Well, Paige, if folks want to, we want to make sure and let them know all the places to find the new single. Also, the website, social media, all that stuff. I want to make sure that that we up that follower number as well, right?
All the places, yes. You can follow me on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and even TikTok. I started TikTok before I would never, but I did it. And they're all just Paige King Johnson, and my website is paigekingjohnson.com.
Easy enough. Easy enough. You got to make it easy for us country fans, right?
You do. Hey, I know that I have a hard enough time, so I try to make it easy on everybody else.
That's good. Well, Paige, it is always great to visit with you. Great to see you face to face again. It's been a minute.
It has been. It's been a real long minute, so I'm glad to be back.
There you go. Well, Paige, congratulations on the new single. Love it. Can't wait to see the feedback you get tomorrow from that, and look forward to visiting with you again real soon, my friend.
Well, thank you for having me. It's good to see you, and hopefully I will see you sooner than later.
Well, thanks again for joining us for this 135th episode in Season 2 of Good Questions with Cameron Dole. If you ever have a comment, a question, or anything else you'd like to know, you can hit me up on the contact page at gqwithcam.com. You can also find me on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook at gqwithcam. If you'd like to help out in the funding for this podcast, you can visit our merch store where we've got hoodies, mugs, shirts, tumblers, stickers, and lots more. That's gqwithcam.com/shop. And if you have a special guest idea, email me gqwithcam@gmail.com. Do want to say thanks to our guests again for being on the show, including Forrest Galante, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, Kevin McCoy, Meathead Goldwyn, Jason Peterson, and Paige King Johnson. And we'd also like to say thanks to our good friend Brandon Allen for coming up with our theme music. We're going to let him play us out and hope you guys have a great rest of your Thursday.